Hello everyone, welcome to this part. We were discussing about the structure of institutions under the Biodiversity Convention, and one of the crucial issues we were highlighting was support, particularly financial support from the developed countries to the developing countries and the regions behind that. Uh, Moving on to this part, it is said that under the Biodiversity Convention, governments undertake to conserve and sustainable use biodiversity. And I think this is a concern for not only government, for no, under not only the Biodiversity Convention, but also in all international instruments that governments are the primary key role player, and government is basically the organ or the subjects who can implement at the sphere. If you you know separate governments from the international scenario, then there will be no body to actually implement international law, international treaties. Now the states which are ratifying the treaties are complying it and thereby also making domestic law in accordance with it, which is not the case when we are talking about domestic law. So this is one concern that, no, this is one issue that the governments in the developing countries or developed countries remains the key uh, institution, bodies, or personnel to conserve and sustainably use biodiversity. And the implementation is mostly dependent on the government, its policies and its lawmaking process all influence in the implementation. Now, states are required to develop national strategies and action plans and to integrate these into broader strategies for the environment and development. And so this is how states should incorporate and thereby make domestic policies and laws, so that proper implementation of the concerned international treaties or convention is being ensured. This is particularly important in sectors such as agriculture, fisheries, energy, forestry, transportation, and urban planning. This is actually with respect to the Biodiversity Convention, where it states that agriculture, having the diversity of seeds and other resources within the agricultural sphere, uh, the process must be maintained so that all categories, species, and subspecies are well maintained and protected. Fisheries, one of the largest categories in terms of resources, sub categories of resources. Forestry, no doubt about it. Transportation, because it does impact on the biodiversity issues, on the protection and conservation issues of resources. Now, assuming that there is a highway route built throughout, uh, crossing the mid of Sundarban from Bangladesh to India, if such kind of road is built, certainly it is good for the transportation, but it will bring ramifications to the conservation of biological diversity. The same happens with respect to urban planning. This is a global challenge where states are actually struggling to make a choice of priority about providing housing at the one hand and protecting the environment on the other hand, particularly in countries which has densest populations. And you understand the situation of Bangladesh in this regard. Our worst situation is with respect to urban planning, as it is deteriorating the environment. Moving ahead, yes. So the Convention on Biological Diversity has conferred a list of commitments to be ensured for parties in order to achieve its purpose. So the list of what you call commitments under the convention includes identifying and monitoring the components of biodiversity that need to be conserved and used sustainably. So this is basically the countries who are ratifying the convention will uh, engage in the domestic sphere to continue with this kind of process. And the first thing comes first. For example, if I take the situation of Bangladesh, as per the convention's requirement, Bangladesh is supposed to identify number one. And for identification, you need science, you need technology, and that's how uh, you must identify what are the resources that needs proper care, what are the resources that has been getting lesser and lesser in number. And secondly, once you identify which are the biological resources at risk, then you start monitoring those, because unless you monitor it, even if the status quo is maintained, then also it is risky. So trying to improve the situations and the future of these species. Second, establishing protected areas to conserve biodiversity while promoting environmentally sound developments around these areas. The point here is that a particular zone or area should be made as sanctuary, should be made as complete prohibition of human movement and engagements of human settlements and other things. This must be in areas which will be uninterrupted, what you call sanctuary for the resources. For example, when we see that birds coming during the winter season from Siberia to Bangladesh in different parts in the lakes and wetlands, so it is important to make sure that those birds have not been caused or harmed by anybody, and the area they are in must be protected. Third is the governments will ensure that rehabilitation and restoration, which actually is needed, particularly with respect to the degraded ecosystems. Uh, and secondly, within point third, the degraded the degraded ecosystem should be promoted so that recovery is possible. And when a particular when a particular ecosystem is degraded, the species surrounding that is also threatened. Now it is important that those species will be required to uh, ensure proper uh, take care. For example, if Sundarban is at risk, the animals, birds, and other species within the Sundarban will also be at risk. So that is the point the author wanted to highlight as per the requirements of the convention. Point number 4, it says that respecting, preserving, and maintaining traditional knowledge of the sustainable use of biodiversity with the involvement of indigenous people and local communities. Now, this is a very interesting areas which is highly important for our purpose, for the reason that Bangladesh is also rich in terms of traditional knowledge. We have so many, uh, you know, uh, uh, bowls, and we have family traditions where there are certain knowledges which have not been incorporated in the books, and that's how they are lost. If you look at the way of uh, the way of ancient treatment in our region, the way before modern medicine is entering in our society, people had been provided treatment by different groups. Now the question is how and what are the knowledges those people applied for the treatment, and these are traditional knowledge. If you ask your grandparents, perhaps they could say some of the issues related to the traditional knowledge. So it's not only about a community's knowledge, it's not only about the tribal people, it's also about every human society where generations after generations people have been living. So they have certain norms, known or unknown, I mean written or unwritten, but those norms are useful for the society, and they are called traditional knowledge. So the respect, preservation, and maintenance of traditional knowledge is important under the Biodiversity Convention. So, in this part, we highlighted about 4 particular commitments the state should continue, and the rest we will be completing in the next part. Thank you very much.